Hello, welcome to the very first episode of Off the Bandstand. I am your host, Christian Wiggs. This was a cool thing that just sprung up, totally an impromptu kind of situation where I wanted to have conversations with the people who I miss from playing gigs with, and people who I admire who, we're always just missing each other because we're always playing one gig or another and maybe at the same time, so we don't often get to see each other. With everything that's going on in the world, we haven't been able to play as many gigs as we like, if any. And so after, taking some time for ourselves and our loved ones and making sure that, we focus on the other things that we weren't able to as much whenever we were gigging full time, now this is an opportunity for us to come back together with the people who we miss being with, and then just have a very informal conversation. It's not a talk show. It's not a gotcha podcast. It's not any, juicy details or anything. It's just us having a good time, which also helps the listeners to get an idea of who we are as people. On the bandstand, you get to hear us play all of the music and get to see us at gigs, but we don't often get the opportunity to kind of express the things about our personality and talk about all the inner workings of what we do and how that resonates into what you hear in our records and at our gigs, performances, what have you. So anyways, this is a cool opportunity for everybody to get to know more about the people in the Austin scene, people in the Texas scene, and then on the national scale as well, with different guests that we're going to have come through. We've already recorded several episodes. I'm making sure to record the intro on the day that the episode releases, so that way we get the latest updates, the latest plugs, and everything. So without further ado, today's episode, the very first episode, and a great first episode, was Daniel Dufour, who is an incredible jazz drummer in town. No one can deny his playing. We talk about it a lot, but he's a very melodic player on what is otherwise kind of known as a non-melodic instrument, being, behind the kid on the drums. So we talk about that a lot. We talk about his new record that he's plugging, which is called Standards, which came out in May of 2020. So right in kind of the middle of everything that was going on with coronavirus. And as soon as I listened to it, I was like, man, we have to have him on, and we need to plug this hard because it's such a great record. He put a lot of time into it. The guys on the record are amazing, Jordan Birchhill and Sam Pankey, and so we wanted to make sure to bring an attention to that. And he has a wealth of knowledge. He was a great conversationalist. We talked for 2 hours, and I know that might seem very long. We're gonna keep the episode somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, maybe 90 minutes is the sweet spot, but at the same time, we've got all the time in the world right now, and if the conversation is great, like it was with Daniel, we're not going to stop the clock just for, to keep it short. So feel free to watch little sections of it. Feel free to watch the whole thing. I promise it's all good stuff in there. And, it was a pleasure to sit down with him. So another quick little plug, we're releasing this on Thursday. This is July 2nd. And tomorrow you'll see the official announcement, but I'm releasing my long-awaited third studio record on Friday, July 24th of 2020. We recorded it on July 24th of 2019, and then just through the mixing and mastering process and making sure that I got it exactly how I wanted, and just firming that up, and then a series of delays with all the coronavirus and everything. It's finally happening. I've sent it out to the stores. There's no turning back now. July 24th, it's coming out, and I can't wait for you to hear it. It features vocalies on the Miles Davis, Bill Evans tune Nardis. It features some original compositions as well, some great Jimmy Van Heusen tunes, and some Cy Coleman, just a lot of stuff that is more contemporary and more how does it resonate in the year 2020? Arrangements of tunes that I really love, but I wanted to, tweak with a little bit. So anyways, July 24th, we'll have more information about that coming up. Can't wait for you to hear it. I hope you'll support it. I worked really hard on it, and I can't wait to share it with you. So without further ado, here is episode 1, Daniel Dufour. This is Off the Bandstand. man. How are you?
Oh, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. All right, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put us on here. Okay, great. Man, so if you want, we can either just like start here, or we can go back and we can do like a little intro, whatever you want.
It doesn't matter to me. It's your thing, your vibe, man. You just tell me what to do.
Cool, man. Well, let's just get right into it. Man, thank you so much for doing this. How are you holding up, man?
Oh, yeah. Happy to talk to somebody, you know. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, you know. We didn't get to see each other that much on and off. I mean, we're always just working with other groups and things all the time, but yeah, it's fine. We're like going on, like we're completing month 4 now of like not really working or not gigging anyways, where you have to kind of figure it out, and it's okay. It's very weird and it's very strange, but I think you can agree to some extent that as much as like I miss working all the time, you know, I was working all the time, just like you were, anybody in Austin. I mean, most professional musicians are working all the time. And I think it goes without saying that maybe we were all a little burned out. I surely was. And even though I kept getting those text messages of this is canceled and this is canceled, you know, it's jazz festival season where I do a bunch of adjudicating and things like that. It's like, that's a big financial chunk of the year for me. And it's all that's getting canceled, and I'm getting depressed and getting really sad about it. All of a sudden, for like the first week I was really depressed, but then after that I was like, man, this is kind of like the universe like making me take a break.
Sure. And
actually like, okay, well, let's actually just do whatever you want. If you don't want to practice, don't practice. If you don't even want to turn on the radio in your car, don't do it. If you want to go, you know, get a milkshake from Whataburger 5 days in a row, go do it. You know, it's just kind of like, just go do it until you get sick of it, until you get bored of it, and then you actually want to get some work done. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm just about at that point where it's like, okay, it's time to start getting some work done.
Sure.
And I think that speaks a lot in terms about like the work that I was doing and the work that we were all doing. I mean, we're all super busy. And you know, the big joke, right, is when you see each other on a gig or in passing, is let's hang out sometime. And
yeah.
And you go, yeah, man, yeah, I'd love to hang out. We should totally do that. And it never happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's like, oh man, yeah, I miss hanging out with people. Like I actually want to hang out with my friends if we can do it safely and where everybody's on the same page and, you know, and doing the right things. And so we get to do that in little increments, and I get to, like, you know, I'm practicing a little bit more, and I'm listening to a lot of records right now, just taking stuff in, you know, which is like such a huge part of your daily shedding, right? It's just like taking records in. But yeah, I'm doing fine. More importantly, how are you doing? How are you holding up? I know I just like talked for way too long there.
No, man, no. Well, anyone who knows me and everybody like watching this will can attest is like I sometimes talk too much, and so like the whole point of this, right, just like of this whole thing that I started, it was really just like very impromptu, and then there was like a really good response to it. So within like 24 hours, it was like, okay, well, let's like start the thing going. So then like we didn't hear it now, but like people will hear it once I edit it together.
Sure.
Wayne Linsky wrote a theme song, and then I went downtown and then cut together a bunch of footage for like a title sequence for just this stuff, and it came together real quickly. But yeah, it's been interesting. I think a big part of how we back to my other thing, I go on tangents a lot, was that I talk too much sometimes. And so the whole point of this is to have like guests on right? And then learn more about you guys. And then since I'm the host and kind of the same person, through my hopefully minimal talking, people will start to get to know more about me as well. But yeah, man, something that you touched on was like the whole thing of like, yeah, man, let's hang, like, let's go and get drinks. Like, I can't tell you how many times there's been like, we've started the gig and been like, man, let's go get a drink after this. Let's like go across the street and go to Garage Bar. Let's go like down to Elephant or Parker or whatever. And then, you know, the gig ends and you're like, man, I'm like really tired. And the whole appeal of like, you know, whatever thread count sheets, you know, that I can go home to and just like get in bed is like super nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, from my perspective, everything has been, it's been fine, man. I really can't complain. There's been like a lot of, you know, things that have been consistent that, you know, for the most part, I don't know how it is with you, but like not a lot of my students have dropped, you know, like a few because their families, you know, just like this and that. But for the most part, a lot of them have stayed. And then I picked up a church gig like last fall that was kind of reluctant to do at the beginning because it's like you reserve those Sunday mornings. So it's like brunch time, jazz brunch gigs. And then you reserve those like Wednesday nights, which we were also kind of doing like bistro hits. So I was kind of reluctant to do that, but it ended up being like a good fail safe, you know, like at the end. So, cause it's like the bread, you know, people are still going to want some sort of normalcy. So the church, but anyways, other than that, man, like the biggest thing that is, you said, like, we're going on month 4. I think the best way to mark the time has been like which show you binge watch and how long ago it was. Right.
Oh, yeah.
There are shows that we, like me and Lydia started, and I'm like, oh yeah, man, like that was like a year ago. I can't wait for the new season. I'm like, oh, that was like week 2 of the quarantine. So
Sure, yeah.
It's a weird time, man. But I mean, kind of the same as like what you're talking about. It's just, you know, I agree that a big part of the discipline is shedding, but like a big part of shedding is listening. And so, I mean, probably like at least 5 to 6 hours of my day, it's just like listening to records. And like, luckily, you know, a lot of people, which we'll get to you in a little bit, but like a lot of people put out new records and they've been like super killing. So it's like easy to like let that time, you know, like go towards that. And then I guess I'm also a little ashamed to say that the Call of Duty skills have gotten much better with all of the free time.
Hey man, I play Street Fighter 5, so whatever, man. It's like, you know, it's something I play and then get really angry about later, and then I turn it off and go practice. It's like it's part of the deal. It helps me get work done, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like something to be said about that too, where it's like you're like sitting down. Like I'm also like really happy that I had Colin Shook like move a piano in my apartment like not too long ago. So then I actually have like a place to shed. But there's like that stuff where you're just like trying to figure out like in writing, you know, like writing arrangements and writing new tunes, and you just like block. So then you're like, well, got to go do something else. Can't really go that far. So I guess I'll come over here to the living room, play some video games. But yeah, man, all in all, sorry, a bunch of tangents, but things have been good. One thing that you had also touched on that I was also going to mention was you're right. We didn't get a chance to like see each other or like play. We haven't gotten a chance to play together. I've been, you know, sent some stuff your way, but you're like the most killing drummer in town who's like always booked, which is like a great problem to have. So hopefully after this all get a chance to,
Yeah. Well, that's really nice of you to say, and you know, I'm very lucky to have been busy and been able. I'm lucky enough that I am called by a large group of people.
Sure.
So that's you know it's really nice, and it's always a learning experience too. Everybody to play, but yeah, hopefully we can play together real soon. You know, I was supposed to do a brewery gig yesterday with Alton Sinclair, and of course, like on Friday, the governor, I mean, thankfully, like cut everything down a little bit, you know, backed off. But it was like, you know, I was excited for this gig out in San Marcos. We were going to be on a stage away from everybody. It was going to be fun. I mean, I see friends playing private gigs nowadays, and that's cool. And normally, I mean, I play private gigs, but I'm not a big fan of doing like the cover band thing. My whole thing is like, if I can avoid doing that, just because that's just not what I'm into. It's not that I'm not discrediting any genre of music. Everything has its place, but you can still not want to do something if you don't have to do it to support yourself. And thankfully, I've been in business where I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I had to work all week where somebody just had to work a weekend and we make the same amount of money, but you know,
sometimes gig is a gig. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I see a lot of that, and I'm really jealous. And it's not even about the money necessarily. It's more just like, man, like I know they're wearing the mask, but they're like far away, and it's a small, really cute little wedding, and you know, and I know they're gonna play for a little bit, and then they're just gonna split. You know, it's like I wish I could play a gig with my friends for some, even if I have to play top 40 hits. At this point, it's like, man, I just kind of want to get out. You know, we've been doing these live streams with Colin Shook. Very thankful that he's put in the work. Goes without saying, and done all this. So I think you have a gig on the books coming up too.
Yeah, we got a gig on the books. I it's still on. I think we're like monitoring a little bit like what's going on with just like coronavirus and all this stuff. But the gig is still on the books for now. Yeah, for the record release. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it should be fine, assuming it's being treated as like a live stream thing. I mean, Colin's been setting all that up, and I mean, and it's the thing. I mean, you know, it's and he's not just doing it for Parker Jazz Club or, you know, Doc Watkins at Jazz Texas. Everybody's streaming and figuring it out. And, you know, we're also very thankful to the Austin Jazz Society that's been helping jazz musicians in Austin, you know, with funds, and they've raised so much money. But then they were working with Colin. And so, you know, we were playing these gigs, and they were, you know, they were able to pay the band. And, you know, not to get I don't think this is a problem to say, but I think the talk, and hopeful what will happen is that they're trying to, you know, start doing some weekly stuff with different bands, because that was like the big thing. It's like, I don't want to be on every one of these, and I shouldn't. Like, we should, like, they're providing money for people, but like other people need to play for the sake of your psyche as a musician, you know. And it's like, to get paid doing it, it's like, you know, we need to open it up for everybody. And at first it was just like, Colin's like, I have all this stuff. Let's live stream Trio and see if we can make some tips.
Yeah,
and
sure.
He did such a great job. The Austin Jazz Society wanted to come in and help support that. So hopefully that's going to continue somewhere down the road. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah, man, they're really doing the Lord's work. I remember like near the beginning of this whole thing, I mean, they shot me an email, and they were like, hey, yeah, like if you want to, you know, we know you're in the scene, if you want to like apply for this. And I even like put in the application, I was like, you know, like I would really appreciate this, because like obviously with all of us, I mean, like when you were saying that like you got all the calls and it was like kind of like depressing, but also a little relieving. I mean, it was intense too, because, you know, as a band leader, and I'm sure you've had to like make these calls too, like band leading your own trio is like when a gig gets canceled, like you get the bad news, and then you have like the worst part of the job, because then you have to call the people in the band, and then it just like dominoes. You had to just like gigs canceled to the point where you were really just like, hey, don't think anything on the calendar is going to be valid for at least the next little bit. But yeah, I even put on there, I was like, man, like, you know, I really appreciate being considered, but try to like get some of these other guys first. I'm sure you already have, but like people like Tommy Howard and Fabio, you know, Augustinus, like people who've got kids, who've got like full families.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like Awesome Jazz Society is really like coming in strong for the community. And I think that's something that's been like really like something to, I was going to say cherish, but that sounds like too dramatic of a word, because like sometimes as jazz musicians, we feel like our music is like, we're keeping it alive, but sometimes it can just be used by, or like as a museum piece by just like the general public. So then to see like this really big outpouring of support, not only from like a jazz society and like the city's jazz society, but by people who are benefactors, who are like being the ones who are able now, where they're able to disperse funds, has been really, really good.
Yeah. They want to do it, and they can do it. and so they're going to do it, and we're nothing but grateful. And I cherish that mentality. It's like it's all cool. I mean, I've done a lot of those Che-Z first Sunday of the month Che-Z gigs with them, and it's always a good time. It's great to get to perform for people where it's not just you're not the I call it the human iPod, but back in the corner playing music for an event, for ambiance. But you get to play music with people for people, right? Instead of at people, and so in more ways than one, they're doing all the right stuff, and they're really helping everybody out, and and they want to do it, and that's I mean, nothing but gratitude for that.
For sure, man. Well, like I said earlier, I mean, this is like pretty much just like an impromptu, informal hang. But
sure.
At the same time, I want people to also like know about you. That's why we're having like all these people on, so we can get to know like all the people who are not only in our scene, but like in other scenes as well, and kind of like bring it together a little bit more. So
yeah.
I guess just like tell me a little bit about like where you came up, and then like what like brought you to the scene, and what brought you to this music, and like what was all those kind of small things at the beginning where you just heard that and you're like, I don't know what that is, that's killing, I want to do that. So yeah, I mean, just real open template. Just tell me about.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Willis, Texas, which is about 3 hours east of here. Okay. It's like an hour and a half north of Houston off I-45. And I was kind of a little country bumpkin. I like to fish, and we lived close to Lake Conroe, so we fish all the time. Sure. And I moved over there however old you are, in 5th grade, whatever that age is, I think 10 or something. Okay. And I didn't have a whole lot of friends or anything at first, and I had one dear friend that was in the neighborhood, and we connected, and so I kind of followed him around for a minute. And so when it came time for 6th grade, that was when you could audition for band, or like you check out instruments, and they pick one for you, and that's what you play, right, for your band career in grade school. And I knew nothing about music outside of an uncle that used to sing, and like my dad's cousin who used to play drums. I didn't know, I didn't even know that. I didn't come from a musical family, basically. And so I was like, well, sure, I'll be in band. And I went to audition for things, and all the lines were too long except percussion. And so I went over there. You're supposed to sign up for 3. So I went over there, and they were like, do you have any piano experience, which they wanted you to have? And I said, absolutely not. Can you label a C on this little bell kit? And I did not point to the right key. Can you play these rhythms with me? I couldn't do it. I said, okay. And then I turned around, and all the lines were still long. So I just turned that in and left, because I didn't want to wait in line. Sure. Lo and behold, your son's playing percussion, and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, that 6th grade year, I was absolutely terrible. I got all the stuff. I wasn't interested. I wanted to fish or play video games or whatever. And my friend and his name's Chris Coker, and Chris was taking so I carpool with him back and forth, and I took and he was taking private lessons, but his mom couldn't pick him up until a certain time. Couldn't pick us up until a certain time. My parents were working late. And so he would take this 30-minute lesson right until he needed to be picked up. Well, there was a spot opening before that, and I was like, well, I might as well take a private lesson. So I started taking private lessons. Yeah. And all of a sudden, things connected, and I became very interested in it. And since 6th grade, I had been taking private lessons for that whole, just grade school career. And I was very interested in it and really wanted to play drums or percussion of some sort. And of course, like, I got the drum set, and I was playing to the rock and roll stations on the radio. I think it was called 94.5, The Buzz. And so I played a 94.5, and I learned all this stuff. And there was a guy up the road who was like a metal drummer. and his name was Daniel. And he, like, I went up there he was like a senior in high school when I was in 6th grade. And I sat there while he played like a bunch of metal, you know, like Slipknot kind of drumming. And I was like, I don't know what any of this shit is, but it's like, sorry, but I have to do it. I have to do this. For whatever reason, I am so drawn into this. And so I really practice drum set. Now, fast forward until I'm a freshman in high school, and I was going to audition for the jazz band. Now, I did not know anything about this kind of music, and I thought that I wouldn't even get it. I knew that they would take 2 drummers if there were enough drummers to have, and that there was another upperclassman that could play drums, whose name was Daniel, by the way. He was a senior when I was a freshman. Well, there was this conflicting class in that it was like a calculus class that conflicted with the same period that the jazz band was.
Sure.
And he was taking that because most of the band kids were smart and they wanted to, you know, go into college not having to take a bunch of not having to take a bunch of remedial courses or whatever.
Sure.
And or basic courses, I guess, not remedial.
Sure.
So I was this freshman in a room full of juniors and seniors, basically, and was the drummer. And I learned real quick how much I was dependent upon, and it freaked me out. I was sweating mad bullets. I didn't know anything about this music, and maybe a lot of those cats in the band didn't either. I mean, Willis, Texas, you know, whatever.
Sure.
You know, there were great players, don't get me wrong, but it's like, you know, it was just like I was so overwhelmed with how little information I knew. So I just started going online and like researching stuff, because it's like, you know, I get my first drum solo and I don't know what to play, and I'm like, I want to cry, you know, as this fresh. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Sure. So I just was doing research, and I was doing all that and like slowly figuring it out. And then I'll never forget when I auditioned for like the UIL region jazz band auditions. And fun fact, even though we were an hour and a half from Houston, at the time, our region was the same region with the High School for the Visual and Performing Arts, HSPVA.
Yeah.
Performing Visual, yeah. So I did this first audition and thought I had some stuff together with my research, how I was doing it. And I'll never forget, it was this drummer. I think he's still living in New York. His name's Corey Cox. And he just like threw down. And there was another kid from another school, and they had like they threw down. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. And it just like reinforced my thing of learning and trying to figure out this music. And I started taking some drum set lessons a little bit and just started to like try to figure it out. And it was like, that was kind of one of the big turning points where it was like, I thought I knew what I was doing and I was getting comfortable and figuring it out. And then I saw these cats that like, this is what they do, and they can do this. They've borderline, they might have grown up with it, you know. I was just like, I am so behind, and I want to learn this because it's just something that speaks to me or whatever, you know. And I started to figure it out, and ever since then, you know, I've wanted to play this music, playing drum set. I mean, I got my undergrad at Sam Houston State.
Okay.
And I got that in percussion. There wasn't a jazz degree. And at that time, really, when I was a senior in high school, I was like, well, maybe I want to be a band director, because that's cool. I could see myself doing this. That's a good safety net thing, you know, whatever. I was thinking about it like that, almost like an insurance policy. But maybe I want to play in an orchestra. Maybe I want to be a pit musician for the music. There's a great theater district in Houston. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, if I was going to stay in town, stay in the area, there's a lot of stuff that I could do, and I can make a living. I could teach, whatever. So I went there. Well, I was actually thinking about clicking the submit application to North Texas as a jazz drummer, but then I started taking lessons with at the time, he was the new percussion professor. His name's John Lane, and he's one of my dear friends. Goes without saying, but you know, he was breathing new light into like region band music, which I just wanted to throw up over because I hated it. I practiced it because I wanted to make all state, but I hated that stuff. And he made me think about things differently. And then I saw he had 2 drum sets set up at the end of his office. I was like, you play? He goes, yeah. Do you play? Yeah. So I showed him the stuff that I was doing. He's like, man, you got a lot of stuff going on. And then he just had the, just the bebop, hard bop language. And it blew my mind. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go here. I have to study with him. I have to figure this out. So at Sam Houston, I was the timpanist for the orchestra, principal percussionist for the Wind Symphony at some points. I played contemporary percussion music. I played, a lot of John Cage music. I played, working on marimba, working on snare drum. I played weird pieces where I'm sitting there in a chair and just straight-faced making bird sounds. And then like I'm playing, like Brahms symphony on timpani or whatever. It's like, so I played in the jazz band, played in the jazz combo. I did legitimately everything I could just to clarify, what is it that I want to do? Because at that time it was a little confusing because I was becoming interested in a lot of things. And then it was just like, I have to play drums. And when I graduated from Sam Houston, I decided to take a year off. Decided to take a break. I thought I was like, I want to get my master's degree. I think that's important. And I was thinking like maybe I should go right after college, but I didn't get applications turned in time. I turned in really bad, pre-screen videos. I was gray-eyed, not into it. I didn't want to go back to school right away. So I took a year off and moved back in with my parents for that year. And that summer, one of my friends came back to town. He was getting his undergrad at UT, and he rode back with another roommate and then asked me, hey, you mind driving me to Austin and we'll just make a weekend out of it?
Sure.
And I said, well, sure, man. Yeah, that sounds fun. Last time I was in Austin was like for some high school contest. Like I'm never in Austin. And that's the town, right? So let's go check it out. So we went and, we kind of hung out and did their thing. And then one of the nights I went to the Elephant Room. I think it was the first night I'd ever been to the Elephant Room. And it was the late night set. And it was Elias Haslanger's band.
Yeah.
It was with Ephraim Owens, a young lit dude Durham, Scott Lanningham on drums, and it's a piano player. I can't remember his name, but he doesn't live in town anymore.
Okay.
I can't remember who he was. Maybe, but yeah. So this was in the summer of, I guess, 2011. Yeah, it was in the summer, like late summer 2011. And if it was Elias's gig, then theoretically that means it was the second Friday of the month at the Elephant Room.
Sure. Yeah.
So whatever month that I can't even remember. And I saw the first set of them just like throwing down, and it was just super swinging. Scott has such a beautiful beat, man. His simple beats so killing, and lit dude was just even back then it's just like you swinging his ass off. Like it just felt so good. It was like all the things that I was like craving for, because back in Houston, I wasn't necessarily in that scene. I was teaching a lot of private lessons, and I was playing a lot of like community theater things. I was getting really burned out, and I saw that, and I was like, well, yeah, I'd love to move here, like play at this club, and so I was like, well, so I put in an application audition for my master's degree at UT. It was like, I'll either get accepted to UT and I'll move to Austin and hopefully make a career out of it, or I'm going to just move deeper. I'm going to like find a place to live in Houston proper. Yeah, and sure. I'm going to get in the scene there. I'm going to do one or the other. Thankfully, I got accepted to UT, and after it took me a little bit to really start working. Some people it doesn't. Some people they just kind of move to town. It's pretty easy. For me, it wasn't, man. I was an application away at Target, before I started really working, thankfully, by the great trumpet player Pete Rodriquez.
Okay.
But yeah, then all of a sudden I just started working all the time, and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my lovely wife, she wanted to move to town anyways, and so it's like, well, I guess we're just going to live in Austin and do the thing. And so now we have a house just outside of the city. We live in Kyle, Texas, and we're doing the thing. Except I'm kind of on we're on hiatus until further
Temporary.
notice.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Man, that's super killing. Man, when you were over in Houston, were you playing any gigs over? Because I know like you go down there and you go play like, well, I guess like formerly Saison, but then they opened it back up, right? They like put it in the basement of Bureau Ferretti's, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, man, there was one club that because I come from Lake Jackson, which is 60 miles south of Houston. So that same. So when you were like the Buzz, I was like, oh yeah, because like all my dad was listening to was just classic rock, and then I was the classical musician who then also really liked listening to musical theater because I was involved in musical theater, and then switched to jazz. So I basically went everywhere around where my dad wanted me to be, except for just the classic rock thing. But no. So there was one club up there that I went and did like one date at, like this super inexperienced, like 18-year-old. Like I tried to hit the scene. Like I had like a very glorious, or not glorious, but like glamorous, like first gig, which was. I was in high school and then like started playing trumpet with jazz band because trumpet was my primary instrument. And then like sang a tune with the jazz band. Somebody recorded it. We threw it up to the Houston Symphony, and there's a jazz singer and a pianist named Tony DeSere who's up in New York. And he was like coming down to do like a symphony show. And I just like submitted a thing and then got to like open for him for a few nights. And so then I was like working as a busboy. The day that I got the news on like New Year's Eve of what was that, 2013. And I remember like working on New Year's Eve and then being like, that's it. I'm a pro now. I can quit my job, throw it down. I don't even look at the email where it says it's not a paid gig, but I'm going to have to like hire musicians to come play with me. And then after that, then it was like, these 3 nights of, brand new 3-piece suit, that's not my communion suit. And then like all these different things. And then, just started playing like little bistros and like Jackson, like just little like country stuff, but not country music, like country type cooking place.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I realized I was like, oh, it's not as glamorous and you have to like put in a lot more work. And so then I tried to get into Houston and played one day at this place called Cafe 4212 that I think is still standing. So I got off like Westheimer. And then, but I think they do just like a lot of like soul and neo soul stuff now. But did you ever get a chance to make it over to, there was one club called Red Cat Jazz Cafe. Did you ever make it over there?
I got to play like half of a gig there. Like I was sharing it with the sax. Well, it's like the saxophone player's gig, and he wanted to do some straight ahead stuff, and he also did like the neo soul thing.
Sure.
So like we played at Red Cat, and it was like his band was like killing doing this neo soul thing, and then I showed up and we were doing this like real aggro straight ahead thing, and you could just tell the audience wasn't into it. And they went back to the neo soul, and that was it. It was like very strange. But yeah, I went there like one time. I mean, I used to play at the old Saison, right? And that was really the only club I ever played at down there. The funny thing about Saison in the Houston scene is like I didn't know those cats like Woody Witt and like Joe LoCascio and David Craig. I didn't know them until the late Rich Harney reintroduced me. It was like 5 years ago, I think, and I think Woody might have hit him up asking if he could play an elephant gig. With Woody, and asked Rich to put the rest of the band together. And Rich Harney got Richard Michael and myself to play with him. Yeah. This was also when Masumi Jones had her residency at Lambert's on Thursdays.
Cool.
I think it was called Masumi and the Gentleman. She's such a great drummer, great human being. And I think she was out of town that day, and I think the bass player was gone too. So Rich decided to have Richard Michael and myself play, and had Woody join as well. So it was like we played at Lambert's from, whatever the time was, 7 to 9, and then ran over and played the Elephant Room. So we did 6 hours of playing together real quick. And we all had a great time. And then the next thing I knew, Woody was like, well, I booked Cezanne. We should book a weekend there and do all that, And then ever since then, at least before the pandemic, ever since then, I go to Cezanne to play, on a busy year, it's once a month, but every couple of months or so, I go and play a gig or a weekend or something. I mean, we did, especially Richard Michael and I did a whole lot of carpooling to Houston.
Sure.
We're playing a bunch of different things, and it's brutal, especially when you're driving down there to play and then drive right back. But it was such like a worth it space. It was such a cool, vibey space, and to get to be introduced to all the Houston cats, which is funny because I'm quote from Houston end quote. I'm not really from Houston. I say Houston because most people don't know where Willis is.
Sure.
So but I didn't know those guys, and thanks to Rich Harney, who's been one of my dear friends forever. So sad when he passed.
Yeah.
He's the one that really opened that door for me. It's crazy.
It's it's always really crazy how the people who get, well, I guess it's not that crazy of a thing, but the people who get us in those little doors, right, that get our foot in the door, are these people who are these titans, these legends, or just amazing people. And then they're like, hey man, see something in you or see something in that person. I mean, you just hear a dime a dozen stories like that. And then those people end up getting right with the right people. And then they become that thing. And it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy where it just keeps happening. That's really amazing. I didn't really get a chance. I had a couple very quick, very in passing conversations with Rich Harney, but definitely heard him play several times. And I mean, it's just so killing. And then I remember whenever he passed and everybody was posting, different recordings of all the stuff he did. I was like, man, this is just the most killing. It's just so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, one other thing I wanted to, that I thought about whenever you were talking about it, I didn't want to miss was, so James Suter, a mutual friend of ours,
oh yeah.
For those of you who don't know, James is not only one of the best bass players that's ever come through the city, but he's also just the best hang, and he is the funniest guy. He and I were talking on the phone the other day, just kind of shooting the shit, and he was telling me a story about you guys playing at Elephant. You guys were playing the late night set, and I was already several tunes in, and you guys were playing something that was just super burning. Apparently, it was just really, really crazy, and people had taken a bunch of choruses. You guys were just going on, and then he kind of looked at you and was like, "No, man, I don't want to take a solo," and we just kind of gave that eye contact. And apparently, you were just kind of looking at him, and you were just going. And he was like, "Yeah, I just kept saying," and it came around to the top of the head, or top of the form. And he kind of looked at you. He was like, no, I don't want. And you were just keeping time, right? Just swinging. And he just kept going man, look, I'm sorry. I don't want this. And apparently you were just giving him this look that he could have swore was a mean mug. And he was just man, I'm sorry. It's just too fast. I'm tired, man. I don't want to keep going. And apparently you just kept looking at him. And then once it got to the top of the second chorus, you took a thing, and he was yeah, and then he murdered everybody and just had the most killing solo. And as soon as the tune ended, he turned over you, and he was just Daniel, man, I'm so sorry. I just didn't want to take a solo. I'm tired. It was super fast. And you were no, man, what are you talking about? You sounded killing. No, what are you talking? And he was no, I thought you were giving me this look. And he was oh, you were no, you were killing. No, I was actually soloing. I was just playing it a little more subtle for the first chorus, and just talked about that. And so kind of as a segue with that funny story, man, when I've seen you, I mean, you were so clearly in it, man. Just in this way, it's so so genuine and so respectful to the tunes, and not only like to the tunes, but the people who you're playing with. I mean, you were just so invested. So I guess I wanted to like just like ask about like that headspace, like where this sounds like cheesy to phrase it this way, but like where are you going? Like whenever you start playing the tune, because you're not thinking about, okay, what am I going to order from the bar, or like how much does that cost, or like am I going to go to Whataburger after this? Like, what are you thinking about whenever you're playing tunes?
Well, first of all, I cannot deny that there might be a gig or two there where I am thinking about those things. If it's
Sure.
depending on the day and how it's been, and if it's a weird gig or a great gig. But if I let's say when we're all like in our element, what am I thinking about? This kind of goes especially with like when students hit me up like for a one-off lesson and they're like, man, I really need help with soloing, and I know you're not just referencing soloing, that you're referencing like time and like playing collectively. Sure. And like what does it mean to play something with these people, and and sometimes there is a deep meaning and sometimes there isn't, or like you don't have the time to think about it, and a lot of and I think we can all agree that a lot of our practice is learning how, especially as improvisers, learning how to support and react and pick ourselves up and do all of these things in as great as we can subconsciously, have the right kind of subconscious mindset where things can, I always tell people, like, you're never going to play like the perfect thing, and I'm not saying that so you can be complacent. I'm saying that so when you get to those points of weirdness, you subconsciously am able to pick yourself up. It's like you screw something up on the bandstand, treat it like you're playing basketball. There's 30 seconds left on the clock and you guys are tied, and like you trip over and fall. You're not going to sit there and look at yourself, and then go, why, God, why? When you fall over, you're going to get your ass back up and you're going to keep playing, without thought, right? And so that's kind of a big part of it. And it's like, if we're talking about like playing tunes, playing like jazz standards and playing time with that, improvising with that, playing solo over that, it's just coming down to most of those cats like, okay, well, play me a solo, or like trade with yourself. And maybe their time isn't happening and the solo isn't happening. There's no connection between the two, and there's no reference of the tune, because I always ask, what tune do you know off the top of your head? And if you have to think about it for more than 10 seconds, I'm not expecting you to be impressive with me. Like, oh yeah, man, like I really know the form in the head to Humpty Dumpty, or like, the night has 1,000 eyes, or something like that. It's like, no. Like what tune do you know? And I always reference like Bye Bye Blackbird. It's like this isn't about you like being impressive with your tune knowledge. Yeah. This is about you really understanding the form and the melody and the changes in harmony, and how you interact with those feelings. I tell drummers, it's like, it's great for you to know the changes. I'm slowly trying to figure that stuff out myself. Yeah. But it's like, if anything, you don't need to, it's not a crazy necessity, though it's great to have in your bag, but you need to understand the feelings of things, like how something, like when a tritone sub happens, and understanding how that feels to you, and blah, blah. I mean, these are like all a bunch of little points kind of all over the place. Yeah. But like, so what I'm thinking about, like when I'm playing, I mean, it's the melody of the tune. It's the form of the tune, and and how I'm going to, support that melody and that idea. And and I tell these, and when I'm going back to the solo thing, telling these drummers, working on them on how to solo, it comes down to like working on the ride cymbal beat, the quarter note, figuring out, because that's a drummer's that's your sound, man. How you play the cymbal, that's your sound. I'll fight anybody on that. Like that's just what it is. Like when you're playing swing, you're playing those quarter notes. It's how you play that beat. Is how you play that eighth note. I'm not calling it a cymbal pattern. I'm calling it the cymbal song. I'm calling it a cymbal beat. You're singing it. Yeah. You're singing that shit, man. Yeah. And it's like, I'm trying to come from that kind of, I can't sing, but I'm trying to come from a singing perspective.
Yeah.
And trying to think, and that just means like, and this is like, especially with you, right? You leading a band and you're singing, and it's like, it's only you, and you're bringing it, and you're bringing the melodies, and you're doing that, and you're the band leader. It's like, what are people going to remember if there's a complete like meltdown on stage? You could have a totally killing gig, and then once something happens like that, that's what people are going to remember if it's like a concert, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm trying to come from that, not to like freak me out, but to come from a like sincere approach. Like that just means I have to keep my mind open, and I have to try to really play melody. Not that it's the most important thing on the bandstand. I'm not registering it like that, but that it's the most important thing that I can play on the bandstand that is going to support what's happening.
Yeah.
I like calling the bass line a bass melody. I know it's not the lead voice. We all agree with that, but it's the foundation, right? And that cymbal beat matching with that, and how you play that, it's like, man, you got to play that melody on your cymbal. It's like, or these comping ideas, anything that when I'm playing time with a band, anything that I'm trying to play between the snare drum and the bass drum, maybe if I'm going to use the hi-hat to accompany, it's all supporting the cymbal beat, which therefore is supporting the rest of the band.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about it that way. And I'm thinking about the melody of the tune. I'm thinking about the harmony of the tune, how it feels. Oh yeah, we're in the bridge. It's a huge minor chord here, or whatever. And it's like, or if somebody's taking a solo and they play some really killing idea that just resonates with me, I might think about that, how I play inside that. Or like in a solo, I might bring that back up.
Sure.
And that's kind of ripping from other, from just great drummers that I love and admire, like somebody like Lewis Nash does that a lot. He'll take these ideas that somebody played like within the first 3 minutes of the tune, and all of a sudden they're coming back, and you're like, and maybe you don't register it right away, but it feels familiar. And that's so cool. Because again, like talking about relativity and audience relativity, like I used to come in and play all this crazy stuff and wanted to I was coming from a technical place. And at the beginning, it wasn't the most viable. And now the older I get, the more I sit with bigger, similar ideas. One of the things that I love that Peter Erskine said one time that has stuck with me for a long time, he said, you play a gig, you play a show, and people leave, whistling the melody of a tune or whistling some moment of some crazy solo, whatever. It's like, wouldn't it be great if like they came out whistling your drum solo, Yeah. And so then all of a sudden I was like, well, I want them to do that. And I want them to be able to at least have the opportunity to do that with my time and how I play with the band, and then it's like, man, it's melody. It's not the most important thing on the bandstand, not at all, but you're collectively becoming the most important thing. It's like, and when you're playing a drum solo too, I always tell these cats, it's like, well, give me a tune and they don't really know it. I'm like, look, you have to support yourself before you can, play these solos by yourself. And the only way you can support yourself is by really knowing the tune, like knowing the melody of the tune, knowing the form of the tune, like knowing the famous intros and outros, if there are any, or maybe knowing some very, interesting ones that not everybody knows. I mean, I've been going back to a lot of Ahmad Jamal stuff, and especially, I forgot what the record's called. I have it pulled up on my phone, but or at least I had a picture of it. And it was, I think it's Ahmad Jamal's first trio record, but it's drummerless. It's Bernie Kessel on guitar, I believe. Yeah. Chamber music of the new jazz is what it's called. And it's just like, just hearing like, hearing this stuff, like they play like a foggy day, and they do these tags, you know, on the melody where it's like ba-doo-be-dee, or you know, that part of the melody, but it's like ba-doo-be-doo, ep, 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 bop, boo-doo, ep.
Yeah.
They just like all of a sudden, like in the tune, in the solos, it keeps going and going, and it's so killing. Like that's just a small example, but like thinking about stuff like that, I'm like, you know, with tunes that I know, and finding these things that I wasn't aware of or didn't know, and having that try to come out in an appropriate musical sense on the bandstand, depending on who you're playing with, what the deal is, you know. It's like I'm thinking about all that stuff, but more importantly, I'm thinking about melody, not in it as much as it is the melody of the tune, but I'm also thinking about like, am I singing everything I'm meaning to play? And most of the time, when it gets weird or too technical or it gets all screwy, it's like I'm not thinking about melody at that point. You know? And then it sucks.
Yeah. Man, I wrote down, you know, like I said, this is like real informal, but I wrote down just like a few like little things that I wanted to address. And like literally the very first thing on my notes is just very melodic player. I mean, like there's such a melodic approach to everything that you do without you even having to say it. And like, it's crazy too, that you're so melodic, more melodic than some actual like chordal or like bass or singer or like horn player instruments, right? On an instrument to like the layman is a non-melodic instrument, right?
Correct.
But so much that you can do there. I mean, like, and I will suggest to everybody, like I'll even once I put this on YouTube, I'll put a link in the comments. But you got that, I mean, it's a 10-minute long video of you playing Jazz Texas down in San Antonio. You're playing Emily. And I swear to God, man, you never played the same thing twice. It was 10 minutes long. Like, it was like a nice waltz. And I mean, just like, I mean, you must have gone through the form, like, I don't know, like 9 or 10, 11 times, something like that. And not once did you play the same thing twice. It was so evident. And like every time I see you, it's so evident that everything that you're doing is so particularly drawn into what the band is doing. And it's not like you like were there, like, and all this is my assumption of how you are. So feel free to jump in and be like, that's not exactly. But I mean, it's not like you were at home and you were in the shed and you're like, all right, man, here we go. Like I transcribed this thing and now I'm going to play exactly this. But I think that's the big discipline, right, of a true person who is like, I was going to say earned the bandstand. I feel like we're all like trying to earn the bandstand. And at certain points we definitely
for sure.
Of our place there. But you definitely just like it, you have such a reverence, like I said, not only for the tune itself, but for the people around you. And I think that's what makes like your trios great and the people that you're choosing to play with, because everyone's dialed into that mindset. And I mean, it's just so killing.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and just to add on to that a little bit, you know, when you mentioned the transcribing and then like kind of like regurgitating the transcription on the bandstand, right? Which is something we all have to do. We all have to. Of course. It's building. And that's another thing with students where, you know, we work on transcriptions and essentially it's like, you know, after they transcribe it and learn it, we then work on, you know, with transcribing, the whole point of transcribing, other than learning this language and learning something interesting to them, is understanding like the essence of what that drummer is playing. Now, the essence of that can be different from person to person because the essence is equal to relativity. Sure. So like you have to make it relative to yourself. And with these students, I'm normally like, well, let's come up with some adjectives that you can describe this solo. Like, not that what I can describe, I want you to describe it for me. And sometimes they tell me things that I agree with. And then sometimes they say things I'm like, well, talk to me about that word when you say this. And then all of a sudden they realize that's not what they mean. And then, so part of it is just like figuring out like exactly what this thing, what this tune, what this arrangement, what this solo, what this cymbal beat, You know, what does this mean to them? And you're getting that essence out of it. And then it's like, well, now I want you to play a solo, or I want you to play time with those words in mind, not this solo. You might come up with some similar ideas.
Yeah.
You might regurgitate right off the top. That's fine. This is where we get to explore yourself through somebody else's music. And that's such a big part about musical growth, about art growing in general, about anything growing, right? Is understanding the history and trying to figure out what that means to you and how you can take those meanings and how your brain works and coming up with something that is inherently you through your past elders and masters of this music.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it's one of the most difficult things to do. I'm still working on it to this day. I learn more about all this stuff all the time. I mean, talk about drummerless trios, like checking out like that Ahmad Jamal record, checking out the Oscar Peterson drummerless trio. Like I've been trying to learn a bunch of different tunes, and it's like on Spotify, there's a lot of Oscar Peterson trio plays, insert composer, Duke Ellington or Jerome Kern or whatever. And it's just like a lot of those tunes maybe I know or kind of know, and I try to reinforce my knowledge of them. And then others, it's like, I didn't know this tune, or here's a cool arrangement, or, you know, just like really trying to focus on melody and relativity. It's like if I had to play in this band, which would totally derail their vibe, like how can I, you know, what is this vibe? What is the essence of this thing? What does it mean to me? How can I play in a way that it would actually be beneficial to this band?
Yeah.
You know, that Ahmad Jamal drummerless trio record is especially scary for that. Because I'm putting it on and I'm trying to play and I'm overplaying. And it's like, what makes it so beautiful is the amount of space, and like it's so dry and it's so soft, and it's like, man, how soft can I play with brushes? It reminds me of like when I play with Kevin Lovejoy. You know, before the pandemic, we were playing most Sundays at Lambert's and every last Sunday at the Elephant Room. And that trio, you know, sometimes I feel like I couldn't play soft enough with brushes on a ballad where I'm like, here are the bristles, and I'm just like barely, it's like I'm touching the hairs on my hand. I'm like there. And I'm like scared because we're so soft. It reminds me of those things, like all this stuff. And again, just putting it all together, trying to figure it out, and like, how can I support what's happening on the bandstand? Now, obviously on the bandstand, we don't get to, we don't necessarily get to think about like, how can I do this? Sure. It's like, you got to go. And that's what the practice, that's what all that listening's for, especially past a certain technical point. Especially in the drum world, I mean, I tell a lot of the students, like, once you get past a certain point, listening is like 60% of your practice.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that.
Yeah, because your ear is going to inform literally everything that you do. Man, like to your point about the thing of just kind of, and I'm paraphrasing, but just kind of like the less is more, and knowing like, I feel like a large part of playing in general, but specifically improvisation, is kind of like, you know, I can say all of these things, but do I need to say all of these things? And should I do like a little bit less? Which is why I really love, you know, like Bill Evans. Like the record I'm about to put out has a huge influence from Bill Evans of, you know, not to, you know, bring up the A-list album of all Bill Evans references, you know, that people talk about with Kind of Blue, but also like Everybody Digs and Explorations. I mean, like his trio, especially, like whenever you talk about like Everybody Digs and Explorations, is like, there's just so much of what he could go off and he could play all of that bebop shit. I mean, he could just go off, but he doesn't. Like, I don't know if you know, or if you've seen that on YouTube, that documentary that's like 45 minutes. It's like Bill Evans. Yeah. What is it? The Artificial Mind? It's not Artificial Mind. The Something Mind of Bill Evans, where he's with his brother. And he's just like, yeah, I could play this, and it's just like plays like this crazy line. He's like, or I could say the exact same thing with less words, and then plays the same line just with about like 40% of what he was playing. And it's just like immediately so much more like clean. You know, I remember when I was first like coming up and trying to do scatting and improvisation, I, you know, was trying to just like put a lot of licks that I had heard in, like a lot of a lot of Clifford Brown vocabulary, and a lot of Miles Davis, being a trumpet player in high school, and still, bring my horn out. But usually if it's like a big gig, I'll pay somebody much better than me to come on the bandstand and play. But just trying to like channel those guys, and like Brad Meldow, like trying to get a little bit more of that kind of heady stuff, focusing more towards like piano and trumpet. But I remember Matt Maldonado, great saxophone player in town. Obviously, him, just if anybody.
Yeah.
But he was telling me, he was like, yeah, man, you could say a lot. You could like throw in a ton of notes, and you could say like TV stand, Xbox, television, DVD, Blu-ray, piano, chair, table. Or you could say, I'm in my living room, here's a TV stand, there's this, there's that, there's that. He's
Sure.
like, so if you're just throwing vocabulary out for the sake of throwing vocabulary out, and you're not making a cohesive statement, kind of going back to your point of, if these people are coming in, it's like, yeah, they might take away the melody, but wouldn't it be cool if they took away your drum groove, or they took away like the lick the piano player played, something like that? Because it's all about like, and at the beginning, right, we're all just trying to figure out vocabulary and trying to like cram it in and have a lot of stuff to pull from, so we're not just like a deer in headlights whenever we run out of our 5 licks we've memorized. But at the same time, there's like a humility to that comes with like the maturity of being like, okay, I can say all of these things, but what's actually going to be more killing, like straight 16th note lines, or like straight 8th lines or whatever, or something that's a little bit more calculated. But then at the same time, you can't be super calculated on the bandstand. It really, like, that's what shedding is for. That's where like the shed is where you're supposed to be calculated. And then the stuff that you play on the bandstand needs to be just a whole lot more of an organic feel. Like, and I feel like this can sometimes be a cop out to say, but like I've had like trios that I've worked with very, very closely over the years, and started first with David Mescatique and Ben Triche, and we had this really specific dialed in thing. And I would feel like, even though whenever I had like guests come on, and then like the second trio that I had was when David left to go to Colorado, but he's back now, was Thomas and James. And so when we'd be playing that, even though we'd have other people come in and they would be super, super killing, the thing about the familiarity and like dialing into what we knew, I was like, I feel like I'm playing better. I feel like I'm hearing things that I'll like get a line out, scat a line, and I'll be like, whoa, like I would have never thought to do that, but we're just all listening to what we're doing, and we're able to like bring that out. So
yeah.
Hopefully that wasn't too long of a crazy tangent, but
no, great.
Man, I definitely want to get to, and I don't know what your time is like. I don't want to take advantage of your time or anything, but we're coming up right here.
We got a little time. I ain't worried about it.
Hour. But man, obviously there's a lot of big things going on in the world right now that are definitely demanding of our attention. Things with like coronavirus and everything like that. And then obviously like a huge thing that we all need to be aware of and conscientious of and supportive with all the things with George Floyd and bringing that movement to light without being
absolutely.
Too political. But if people were to go to my Instagram, they'll see just how political I am. But that's why we made a separate Instagram account for Off the Bandstand. And then you have my personal account if you want to hear all of my convictions, because I assure you there is no shortage. And I've enjoyed your posts as well. But obviously those things demand our attention. They're very, very important. But also I don't want to diminish that putting out a record is a huge deal, because like that's like sometimes a multi-year investment, because, or, whether you've got ideas that stretch back several years, or you just like sat down, you like hit the shed really hard where it's like, specifically I'm writing this album, I'm getting this together. And then you have to, just making my third one myself. It's like you do all of that work, you get all the arranging done, you do all that, you record the record, and then I don't know, did you produce your record? Like, were you doing all the mastering, like notes, other than just?
Yeah, well, we all were. So we've all been sharing the new record standards, and so. My general thing with these records is that we all go in on it. Like
Yeah.
and we all contribute to it and we all help produce it and give the notes for the mixing and the mastering and we're all collectively coming up with the tunes or the arrangements or whatever. There's always something. Normally I'm normally the person, so this is like my fourth recording now, and I'm normally the person that's like kind of help moving it along.
Yeah.
Or just like, finally we get it all mixed and mastered and no one said anything. I'm like, hey, is this cool that we release this? Because I think this is great. And if somebody's not cool with it, I'm not going to release it.
Yeah, sure.
Because we're all putting it together. And this record I guess a lot of these recordings have kind of been like this, like kind of off the cuff, which are, for me, I love any kind of studio session. I'll do whatever. I've been on a array of some singer-songwriter things, or I was very lucky to be on a track on a White Denim recording that came out last year, around this time last year, I think. And, so it's like, I'm down for all that stuff. But like when it's like, I'm playing with this band, we've been playing together for a while, and it feels good, and there's cool intros and outros, and I finally figured out all the song licensing stuff and what I needed to pay for versus what I didn't have to pay for. It's like, oh, well, let's just go in the studio and cut a record. If it's a good day, it's a good day,
Yeah.
We'll all split everything, so if it's a bad day, we're all not out that much money. How's everybody feel about that? Oh, yeah, that's fine. So we go in and so we went in, Jordan, Sam, and I, and Jordan Burchill on guitar, Sam Pinky on bass, and myself on drums. And we went in, and just in one day at Orb Studios, Matt Nelly was our engineer. I always recommend Orb, and I always recommend Matt Nelly. They're just that's one of my favorite studios. And Matt is a really, really great friend of mine. He's helped with my first record, Distance, and he's done this record. The band that did Distance, we went back in the studio in January, and we have another record that's going to be released into this year or next year. Yeah, so Matt's helped working on that and doing all that. He's great. It's amazing. I love that guy, and I love Orb Studios. And yeah, so we just went in. We had these tunes that we played. We felt comfortable tracking like 6 of those 6 standards, and it was like, well, we have some time. Let's play some free stuff. So we just came up with some weird little vibey groove thing. Sam was like, I'd love to bow my bass.
Is that where Standards came from? Huh? Is that where the title track came from? Standards, the first?
Yeah. It's kind of, it's a funny little thing. It's like, I was like, oh, yeah, well, let's do a Standards record. And it's like, well, I can name it Standards and have nothing be named Standards. And that's whatever. Or like maybe I should call it one of the standards, one of the tunes. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to call it Standards. And if we can come up with a funny, like cool, vibey, free thing, I'm going to call that Standards. And then there's going to be all the tunes, and then we'll do another free thing at the end, which is what we did.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. My whole thing is just like in the moment. I mean, it's different stuff for different people. And what are you trying to do with your music?
Sure.
And with everything that was going on, I mean, I think it goes without saying, when everything shut down in March in Texas, I was pretty depressed on and off. And it was like, I just was not in the mood to push anything and get it done. And I had already set it all up where it was going to release digitally in May. So, and we were going to do a CD release gig, but then everything got shut down. It was like, and then May 8th was when it released. And then soon after, right after that, that's when, the thing with, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all these things, Ahmaud Arbery, all this stuff just happened. Yeah. And then all the protesting Black Lives Matter, which is inherently much more important than this record. But, so I, obviously after the release, I thank people for checking it out, but, all that stuff is top priority. And, and especially I think we can both agree in our minds it is. But so when we did that CD release on Friday, via the Monks live stream, it was really only because like Colin had dialed in the live stream. He had Friday free. I asked him, how much do you charge to produce everything? And maybe I'll get the guys in. And it's like, we called it a release. It's not really a release. It was like, I just wanted to play a gig with my friends and just play this music because we hadn't done it in a long time.
Yeah.
And other than that, it was nothing more than that. And just like a hang, just to try to give to people who wanted to listen. It was really just that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's, man, I really like respect and agree with and have a great admiration for all of your takes on that. You're right. We recorded my last record on July 24th of 2019. And then it became this big process where I just went through a ton of mixes, and Charlie Kramsky is really, really great. We did over.
Oh, Charlie's the man.
Yeah.
Charlie's awesome.
And like, God bless him, and I owe him a bottle of whatever bourbon that he wants for all of the copious. I mean, I sent pages and pages and pages. There was like this idea of like getting exactly how I wanted. So I originally planned on releasing it a few months after in October, and then December happened. I was like, well, it's like Christmas and it's not a Christmas record, so I'll push it maybe to Valentine's Day. And then we decided to do around Valentine's Day, and then I was like, oh, it's not quite ready. I need to get the album art. And then so I planned on doing it in the middle of March. And then obviously all the shit went down. And then after that, then I was like, okay, well, like, I feel like it's inappropriate, not from a business side at all, just like from a just current event standpoint. It's like, it's not appropriate to release something now. It's not really a celebratory time. This is a time where we all need to be very serious. We all need to start just like focusing on what's important. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to release it end of May. It's going to be fine. And then obviously everything happened with just like all the mounting news of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And I was like, man, this is just really not the time. And I know that like I have friends who were like, yeah, I had already like preset, our releases. And it was just kind of this thing where we're like, all right, we'll just like, there's no stopping it now. So it'll go out. But yeah, I mean, I at the same time, like what I said, whenever I brought up the record, like your record was, you put a lot of time into this. Like you guys put a lot of time into it. And while there are like a lot of other things going on, I definitely want to, commend you for whatever it's worth. And also just like get the word out and be like, guys, go check out this record, because I mean, it's really, really killing.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And not only, going back to our conversation with James, I was talking to him this morning, and I was like, yeah, man, like Daniel's just like super killing, a very melodic player. And I was like, he's definitely got, especially with this new record, got like that idea that you touched on, which was like 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, where it's like respecting everything that's come before, but also trying to be an innovator, because, like Miles Davis wasn't playing the same thing, right? He like changed the whole sound like 4 times. So
correct. Yeah.
And I told James that, and he was like, man, he's like, Daniel's got 1 foot in the past, and he's got like 5 feet in the future. Like he's just like going for it. And it's really evident, like looking at the track list, like looking down, like I did really appreciate that like Standards was this like real vibe, kind of just feeling like impromptu, like all about the space type thing. I thought that was fun. But and then just also like all the things you are, like not like, dare I say, like not like a clear, just like, here's the head. It was like, no, we're going to play this. We're going to play around with this, and we'll like pay tribute to the head, and we'll also play the head at some points, but it's a lot more than that. And then whenever you get to more, or not more familiar than all the things you are, but when you get down to like Nardis, and then that is like this really cool take on the tune, right? That like I haven't done before. And then In Walk Bud is just like swinging, just like the whole album feels simultaneously so calculated and so killing. At the same time, it just feels so organic. I mean, it just feels like you guys have been together for so long, and you just went in and it was like, boom, lay it down. So it didn't surprise me at all when you told me the other day, and then just now, about how you're like, yeah, we've just been playing it for a little bit, and you like to kind of go on and do off the cuff stuff, because I think that's if you can do it, that's the best way to do a record rather than reading a new chart
Yeah.
for the first time.
Yeah, and especially in this kind of music, right? You know, it's like, I don't want to say when you're doing an album like this that there are prerequisites, but they're kind of are, I guess.
Sure.
And you know, we've both been band leaders for a while now, and it's like and even before then, being in a band, and being a side band, and like, or being in a big band and seeing how people put programs together, what people are calling on the gig, and then being like, oh man, we're playing a lot of the same tempo swing tunes. Like, where's the ballad, or where's the straight 8 tune, or whatever? Man, we haven't played a waltz. Can we play a waltz? It's like, basically, you kind of have this like subconscious checklist. Like, well, yeah, we need to have something swinging, and you know, like, yeah, so In Walk Bud, we like playing that tune. We'll put like a second liney kind of New Orleans-y, whatever, almost country sometimes sounding like intro on it, like this kind of, you know, emulsion of a bunch of different things. And then, but like something like All the Things You Are. It's like, okay, that's on so many recordings. It's on a lot of modern recordings in different varieties, or maybe people play it in odd meter or whatever. And I was like, well, so the bass line that Sam plays at the beginning, dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da, that thing, he started playing that a long time ago. And when I also have this trio with him and Damian Garcia, piano player, and he was doing that there. And I was like, oh, well, let's actually record All Things You Are. And, you know, you're going to play, let's like, because that's a really short take. Normally with a tune like that, maybe it's really long. You know, maybe the solos are like, they're going and going. It's a long tune. That's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. There are a lot of recordings that I like that. But I was like, I'm a big fan of opposites. Like, okay, so All the Things You Are, it's a tune that everybody knows. And it's just going to be recognizable, even to the person that's like kind of knows like jazz music. You know, they'll kind of like, wait, what is that? I know this tune, even if they don't. So it's like, so what am I going to do? All right, well, I like that, you know, and how the tempo Sam plays that at, that's like a double time feel. It's like really fast, but it's like almost ECM straight 8. And it's like, well, let's do this. You play an open solo, you set that up, and we'll play that intro, and then we'll just start, and then Jordan will take a solo over the changes of the tune. And we're not going to play the melody until the very end. Yeah. And like, that's how we're going to do it. And we're not going to play the normal intro and outro because everybody's expecting it. Yeah. We're just going to go da 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 da. Yeah. You know, and like, that's it. And it's almost like or classical music. It's like this like kind of contrapuntal playing that we're all doing, where it's very like, you know, we're all playing different things at the same time. And it's just very like question and answer, filling in the spaces and just going in and out really fast, straight 8th note kind of things. Yeah. You know, it has this interesting pacing that's not just ding, 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 which, you know, I live and breathe that. But, you know, I was thinking, well, if I'm going to actually put this on the record, if I'm going to record All the Things You Are, I want it to be different, but I want it to be inherently the trio and the band. I don't want it to be different for the sake of being different. Yeah. It just needs to be inherently us. And can it speak for itself in a way that is positive for people that like this kind of music? You know, so it's like I was thinking about like that, and it's like, oh yeah, Moon River, we'll just play that as a waltz. And Jordan came up with that vibe thing, the vamp thing at the end. It's like, okay, let's kind of turn this into like a rock thing at the end. I mean, we can do it in a way where we can connect the dots, where we can connect everything that we've been listening to and taking in from different styles and genres and what really speaks to us, and putting it into something that we really love and enjoy. And it works, and and most importantly, it feels good. You know, if it feels good to the band, in theory, it's going to feel good to the listener. So, like, it just kind of made sense. Like, how Jordan improvises and how he plays stuff, it's so killing. He takes his time. He's real open with his ideas. He's not a guy that just goes all over the instrument, which I love that too. But he's very choosy when that happens. So, like, something like the vamp on Moon River at the end, like totally makes sense with the vibe, like with the recording. Something like that. Or like, we're gonna play it ballad, we're just gonna play it straight through. It's gonna be really short. I mean, the new record is short. It is. It's the tunes aren't very long, and I like that. It's not because I don't think people can pay attention to long music. That's not what I believe. But it's just because I just like, we're gonna make this statement. And it's like, we're just going to do this thing. If we can have one good day in the studio and everybody's cool with everything, then we're going to release it. And like, that's just it. And again, it's different for everybody, right? Especially, like what you're talking about with your recording and everything that you had going on. And, you're going for this certain sound, this certain vibe. And with me and my records, I'm pretty open. It's like, oh, this feels good. This sounds good. Oh, maybe turn this up. We have notes.
Sure.
But like, it's, the thing is, it's like, it's different for everybody. And that's what makes music so cool, is that there's so many different takes of different styles of, like, not just the tunes and the arrangements, but the mixing and the vibe. And, it's so interesting. I can't wait to hear your new record.
Man, I would love to send it to you. I'll send it to you today.
Please do.
Yeah. Man, just like I said, 5 feet in the future, man. Like, just I love all of that approach. And I mean, it's very evident when you listen to your records that it's like, I mean, you're doing the same thing that like Gerald Clayton and Kurt Elling and Danilo and like all these people are doing, where
that's nice, man. Thank you.
Of course, like, it's just very focused on anyone who has ever seen me live or been on my Instagram account or been on my Facebook or whatever, knows that I just like worship the ground that Kurt Elling walks on. But I mean, it's just so, I mean, just before we got on, I went on a run this morning and listened to the entirety of his first record, which is called Close Your Eyes, from 95, I think, 95. And I mean, there's like nothing. There is not a single tune that is straightforward on that thing. I mean, it's all vocalese, it's all spoken word, it's all just like very, very avant-garde. And then as he like continues on, I mean, once you get to like The Messenger, I mean, he does Nature Boy, which was like a Nat Cole thing, but then like in this completely other way that's like more, more contemporary. And then you get to This Time It's Love, and then you get to Man in the Air, and he's putting in Matheny shit, and then just all this stuff. I mean, and then I really love the Bond Sessions Gerald Clayton record. I don't know if you know that one. Like, If I Were a Bell, right? Like, this just like, it's a completely another world that he stepped into. And then listening to just a lot of Meldau stuff, I mean, it's just so great. It's so great because it has that reverence for all of the bebop stuff and everyone that's come before, but it's very focused on what are we going to do? Because if you look like historically, like every decade, there has been something that has pushed the envelope forward. And it doesn't mean we can't also incorporate that, like you were saying, where you're like, we're just going to play a ballad, or we're just going to like do this, and it's going to be real short. But it's always focused on like, okay, like, this is a controversial statement, but Great American Songbook as is kind of played out. So like, how are we going to not only add like more original tunes, but add completely new interpretations of tunes that everyone heard a million times before? Just like you were saying with all the things you're like, we're not going to, we're not going to do that, because it's the calling card. It's like the checkout moment. It's like, oh, all the things you are, let me go grab a beer and I'll come back. And
yeah. I mean, it's like, are we going to sound like we're just a bunch of great musicians at a jam session?
Yeah.
Which is fine and valid. It's all about the band at the time and what speaks to them at that time, right? And it's like, I was thinking about that, and then thinking about, but how can we make it different where it's still, I mean, we're all pros. We all know what's going on. We're not afraid to try new things, like, what's comfortable, what makes sense. And especially with that band, we've been playing a bunch of brunch gigs and things. And some of those intros and outros Jordan came up with on the gig. We're playing a background gig, and, and he's doing those things. And it's like, oh, that's killing. Like, we're all looking at each other like, yeah, that's super cool. Like, we should just cut a record. That'd be really fun.
Those those wallpaper gigs are almost sometimes the funnest, because it's like the Shed, but on a more it's just like being on this bandstand that is also simultaneously the Shed, and it like helps to birth like all of those things that are going to make for the really cool show that you want to sell tickets at, you know, for like a release thing, or like where it's like actually reading charts, you know, or
absolutely,
just
man.
Arrangements. So.
Yeah. Everything has its purpose, you know. It really does. That's, you know, and you learn a lot from everything if you choose to. And some of these ideas, some of the tunes I've written, some of the, you know, whatever gigs, you know, it's like a little arrangement, you know, these things that stuck, you know, and then we put it into context at a Monk show or on a recording or whatever, you know. It's like, you know, you have to, as best as you can, because you're not always going to. You might be at a gig that you just don't want to be at. You've had a really bad day, but, you know, taking those things. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the road back from a late night or something, and I'm like singing something into my iPhone, you know, and like I don't even know what the hell the pitches are, and I know I'm way out of tune, but I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure it out in the morning, you know, and then write it out. I have a bunch of little ideas like that for stuff, you know. Yeah, we get, you know, and some of that stuff is going to be on this new record that's coming out. I've also been writing. I've been wanting to do like a chordless trio or chordless quartet record. Cool. And I was also, dare I say it, I think I'm going to book a day at Orb with Matt, and I'm going to record some solo drums. And I've been like, just like slowly, like very comfortably just charting out little ideas. And again, it's not so I can say, okay, Matt, hit record, and I go, bah! You know, it's like, I don't want that. I'm trying to come from a different perspective. That's not that there are ostinato type of figures, and maybe, you know, or these melodic kind of figures. It's like, I've been writing words down, like, okay, like hymn, you know, like a hymn. Yeah. It's like, well, what resonates on the drums with that word, and like, what can I play that is going to be inherently that's like, so that means like simple and very full and very melodic. And it's like, and especially on the drums, man, if it's one of the things that I learn every day about this instrument, it's how terrifying it can be to play simple when we've worked so much on technique, and we've played so many fast things, and we've worked on so many, like, how fast, what are all these things that we can play inside these couple of beats, a couple of measures, or in this, you know, we're playing in 5, well, I can play 7 over 5, or if we're playing vice versa, or, oh, we're playing in 3, let me play 4 over that, you know. All of a sudden it's like you're doing all this math in your head. It's like, well, how can I play just simple and open and just play one big note and actually sit there and not be afraid to not play anything for a couple. Like that's kind of what's been the most terrifying thing for me. And so, like, I want, if I'm going to actually go through with it, I want this drum solo record to be of these kind of moments where it's like there is that space, but then there's going to have to be the denser pieces or whatever. Like, oh yeah, my ode to the cymbal beat, you know, maybe there's just a track where I play time, but it's like the comping and things is like, it's very repetitive and melodic or something that it, you know, or it's almost like I'm playing a tune. It's like I've been thinking about stuff like that, charting stuff out. I have all these ideas for recordings. It's like, thankfully, I'm able to collaborate with people that want to go in on it, and we all enjoy the vibe and what we create together. So it's like, well, you know, if I can get stuff out, just keep cranking records out and have a bunch of stuff. It's like, it just will hopefully speak to somebody, or, you know, it's like I'm thinking about all those things. Yeah. Like just how, you know, well, let's just keep cranking records. Like, yeah, I want to do a cordless thing. Like, yeah, I want to maybe go back in with Sam and Damien and record a standards record with those guys. And it's like, you know, yeah, the solo drum record, you know, I love listening to the Max Roach solo drum record or the Nate Smith solo drum record. It's like, you know, I'm not trying to be like those guys, but it's like I've listened to those and I've taken it in, and I've tried to relate it to myself and my life. And I want to maybe try to create, some solo drum tracks that are relative to my experience.
Yeah.
As like a percussionist in my undergrad, I mean, I had to go pick out, like, we would go and pick out like the best like tin cans, because we would play play this one piece, John Cage's Third Construction. It called for an array of instruments. It was a quartet piece, but everybody had like 5 tin cans or something. And so you would go and you'd find these beautiful tin cans that were different pitches, and, and you'd play them. And then at the end of every practice session, they were dented in a little bit. So we'd take these little hammers and we'd re-hammer them out because we didn't want that can to break. It's like, I had to play a bunch of weird shit and look at a bunch of, weird shit. It's just like, maybe for somebody that's not into that music, they would be like, what? I was in Huntsville, Texas, like, like tapping on bowls and stuff, people, it was a very conservative town. Those people probably thought I was like on LSD or something.
Yeah.
But like, I'm looking for these perfect sounds because I needed these for this or whatever, or had to make a bunch of instruments. And it's like, all of that is a part of my life, and it does influence how I play the drums. Learning how to do like an orchestral, like thumb roll on a tambourine, or really playing that one note on a triangle, It's like all of that has influenced how I play the drums.
Yeah.
And I think it's what can make me semi-memorable is just because maybe I'm coming from it from not just a drum set perspective. But I'm a drum set player, and like the cymbal beat is my life. And I've studied those cymbal songs, and I've like tried to match them and tried to really think about the eighth note, and then like think about like how is the piano player comping, how's the guitar player comping, how are the horn players' eighth notes, or the vocalist who's scatting, like how are they playing their eighth notes? Do I match that eighth note? Do I compare and complement, or do I contrast it because it actually works in a contrasting manner? It's like, I think about all this stuff a lot, and anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but
no, man, it's all really great stuff. And I would definitely say that I don't think you'll meet a single person in a 90-mile radius that would say that you are anything besides memorable. Like everything that you do is just so killing. Not to just like keep butter in your bread, but it's really, really great. But man, it's just like I was saying, five steps, like you're just like you're on another plane, like the way that you're thinking about these things. And I think it really has to do, if anything, I think that's like a testament to any like young drummers, or really just musicians in general that might listen to this, is that like you really got to put in that time, because it's like you can't just jump in and be like, oh yeah, I want to like swing super hard, or like I want to do like all this like extra shit, like I want to like really do avant-garde type stuff. Because if you don't have this full, I'm speaking from like my side of things, if you don't have this full understanding of what you're doing and everything that's come before you, and then you're keeping that in mind and it's helping to inform what you're doing, then it'll sound maybe contrived or a little forced or a little out of place. But if you've really taken the time like you have, I think a huge checkpoint of knowing that you've put in that time is telling those stories of being like, yeah, I was in HEB and I was banging on, tin cans. That is putting the time in, man. That's its own shed for sure.
It's very strange time in my life. I loved going back home and being like, hey, Dad, look what I'm doing in music school. Look, because I was thankfully financially supported through my undergrad, and it's like, look what I'm doing, And my dad apparently told my mom one time, he said, and this is like some King of the Hill shit. Like he looked at my mom and said, that boy's turning into a beatnik. Oh man. I was like, what? Oh my God.
Wouldn't be the worst thing though, man.
Yeah, it's like that's nothing but a compliment. And In all honesty, I think that's really funny. It's not something whatever. I knew what I was doing. I knew what he would think about it, and that's why I told him, to mess with him. We're a family that likes to mess with each other.
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, if you can do all the weird shit you want to do and still pay the bills, no one can tell you any different. So
success is just doing what you want when you want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if that means you being a janitor is what you can't live without, and you have a great time cleaning bathrooms, as funny as that might sound, it's like you're successful. Like you just are. Like that's so many people, especially in the music world, get so wrapped up about that. Like I'm putting music out there that I really enjoy, that really speaks to me, and I'm putting it out there also with the audience and the listeners in mind. I'm not trying to this is the sound of popular music and I need to fit this sound so I can sell and do all this. It's like I'm doing everything I want to do when I want to do it. I'm paying the bills and I'm supporting my family. And especially you had mentioned the audience, and I'm trying to register with the audience. And I'm going to plug Kevin Lovejoy one more time, because he's somebody that I've definitely learned that from a bunch. Where even the little things, like we're on the bandstand, he's like, what do you want to play? And we call something, he's like, oh man, it's like we just play that for the audience. Or it's like, oh, I don't know if the audience would register with that. Things like that, where it's like, yeah, I'm so into my world and thinking that the audience has to fix to me, when it's almost the opposite. Like we want them to take in what you have to offer, but at the same time, I treat it as like a really cool thing, like being yourself but trying to be yourself and be a part of the actual audience at the same time, whether they're super jazz fans or not, right? And you read the room and you figure it out, or sometimes you stand your ground if it's getting a little weird. Again, reading the room. But we cut this record, like we all really love this, how this recording turned out. We love the playing, we love the arrangements. It's just different enough, but it's natural for us as the band, and it's relative to a variety of listeners, where they might get something positive out of it. Yeah. And that's all I can hope for in my playing live or on a recording or on a live stream, whatever. It's like at the end of the day, I just want there to, just for somebody to take in what I have to offer and have an opinion about it is gratitude for me. I'd much rather have somebody come up to me and tell me hey, I listened to your set and it's just like this, I don't like this, or even I hate this. As much as that's going to sting, I am thankful that they took the time to try to relate it to themselves, because that's what we normally do with art, right? I'd much rather it be that way than somebody going to the bathroom at the Elephant Room. They walk past the bandstand, and when they go to leave, they go, I had no idea a band was playing here. Who knew live music? That's the worst. Yeah. It's you're trying to bring something, and it's like they don't even know you're there. That's what I really dislike. Yeah. But and it's it's not fun to be told that somebody doesn't like your music. I mean, I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah, sure. It's a real relationship. It's a real relationship with the audience, and it's this, like you said, there are times where you're just kind of screw it, I'm gonna play for me now, because I'm tired of playing, a million. I was gonna say Cole Porter, but I was like, no, I could play a million Cole Porter tunes in a row and still have a good time. But it's I've played all these A-list things, and as a vocalist, and to all my students and anyone who I have conversations with, I'm always man, as a vocalist, you really need to be going and doing the extra thing. You can't just do the Sinatra thing. You can't just do all this straight ahead pardon my French, but bullshit. That's just there's nothing wrong with it. Me and Thomas playfully have this back and forth where he's like, man, Sinatra's super hip and super great, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And he's like, but he's super swinging with the bassy band. I'm like, yeah, but was it him or was it with the bassy band? And he's like, well, it's both, because they're making each other swing. And I'm like, yeah, but and I think that no hate towards Frank Sinatra. I mean, obviously he's got like a good thing going, but it's just, it feels like that's a very commercial side of things. And then you've got this whole other side of things where it's like a lot more like art driven. Like I feel like a perfect balance of somebody who could throw down and do like artsy shit, but also, was very commercially successful was like Mel Torme, right? I mean, that
Sure.
was like the match for Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, it was just like those two were like the people were scatting and like killing it. And it wasn't because they were listening to other singers. They weren't listening to Bing Crosby and young Frank Sinatra and like all this stuff all the time. They were listening to all these other horn players and like getting it going. So, to tie that back into what we were talking about, there's this feeling of sometimes where for me, people will come up and the worst thing for me to hear is like, oh my gosh, like you must just love Frank Sinatra. And it's like, well, maybe that's the criticism I need that's saying I'm missing the mark. Or maybe they're just relating it to something they know, and Frank Sinatra is the only person they.
Sure, yeah.
But it's this feeling of, maybe I want to just do what I want to do, but at the same time, you can totally turn an audience off when you do that. Like we were playing the KUTX thing at Juliet, and we played like a bunch of straight ahead stuff and played some burning stuff to, you're just trying to entice people to pay attention. And then I was like, all right, we got him, like big applause. So I was like, man, let's hit Moment's Notice real quick. Let's hit him with some Train. And, we'd like, hit it burning. And then at the end of the tune, everybody's just so alienated because they have no idea what happened. They're not going to Parker. They're not going to Elephant Room. They're not going to Stay Gold. They're not going to like these places. They're just here to listen to like some easy listening music. And then we've just blown over these like crazy changes that like the layman doesn't probably understand. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but just something that's a little more out there. So I think you're absolutely right. There's that balance that you have to find, and it's a real relationship. Like Kurt Elling in a podcast once was saying that he was like, yeah, I always am focusing exactly on the people, and it's not we're playing and you're there. It's we're doing this together. And he was saying that's why he doesn't necessarily like when people have their phones out at his shows, because he's like, look, I'm not giving this to you for later. We're experiencing this together, and like I get it, you want to have a memento, but dial in, because like the band's dialed in, we're all focusing on each other and we're trying to focus on you, so let's like have this together. But I think that's also a big discipline of what the band's doing and how they set up that kind of ambiance for and like precedent whenever they go into playing the show. But sometimes you just have fluke crowds too, so I mean it just
it's it is a dice roll. We are gambling a little bit depending on where we're playing and what's going on, and if anything, like going back to your students, you telling them to like, don't just get stuck in one realm or whatever. I mean, really, and I do that with my students too. And the biggest thing is like, it's okay to they're going to have things that they like and they want to dive into, but it's also equally important to dive into things that they don't like. It's fine to not like something. It is inexcusable to not appreciate something. Because once you have no appreciation for it, then you're saying it has no worth, which is irrelevant, because it does have worth to somebody. It might not have that kind of worth to you, but it has worth to somebody. I'm not the biggest fan of pop music or maybe some country music or whatever, but I respect it and appreciate it for what it is. Even the stuff that we make fun of all the time, it's like, because it does something for somebody, and it's not like we can't learn from it. I might not be listening to like crazy, or not, I don't want to call it crazy, let's just say very like aggro, avant-garde, free jazz or something. But sometimes I put a record on just for like the sense of, just to get my senses like totally cleared out. Like let's say I'm listening to a bunch of consonant music, and it's like, okay, I'm getting really burned out listening to all this stuff. It's all kind of melding together. And then maybe I put on an Albert Eiler record, okay, like Ghost Variations. Now, I don't necessarily like that record, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate that record. And maybe I listen through the whole record, you know, and it's, you know, it's a lot of the same kind of stuff. It's kind of all over, you know, it's it's very dense and it's very dissonant and it's very just kind of like dynamically can be like kind of one dynamic for a long time. And then like you get through that, maybe, you know, you exhale and you go, like you're exhausted from listening to it. If it's just something that's not your wheelhouse, like it is for me. And then like I go back to other things that I was listening to. And then all of a sudden I can listen to things in a different way. Like I hear things that I wasn't hearing. And it just, it reinforces the idea of appreciation and what thing, not like, yes, this Albert Eiler record maybe does this one thing for me, but I know, I mean, that record might have saved somebody's life, man. Sure. It's like, you can't discredit art like that and say it has it's not worth appreciating. Yeah. And so like you know, so with my thing with my students is to like, get them to do the digging. And like when they find things that they don't like, to even check it out more, just so they can try to understand it. Assuming it's like a professional musician, band, genre of music, it's like, you know, yes, I'm not sitting here listening to Billie Eilish or whatever, but it's not like I haven't checked out some of that before just to try to understand the premise and the vibe. Because it's like, you know, at some point we have to understand, try to understand where some of these audience members come from when they come up to you and you're playing music that's not even relatively in their wheelhouse. Yeah. And they're confused by it, even if it's killing and it sounds good and everyone else in the audience loves it. You know, you want to bring some relevance to everybody, and just to like check out other things that especially maybe you're not into is going to just be beneficial for your subconscious. And for you to, even if it's like, they're not going to like anything you do, but they come up to talk to you. Now you at least have a reference point of how to talk.
It's a conversation. Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, maybe they now they register you as like a person and not as like just a random employee or something. Yeah. Or like, you know, because some people are like that. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, then they actually sit down and they check out your music. And all of a sudden it just reaches them just a little bit. Yeah. You know, it happens all the time on the bandstand when I have this band and we're playing at the Elephant Room, and maybe like, let's just say that playing the tune Girl from Ipanema is something we can all play, and it is a beautiful, beautiful song. It's gorgeous. But maybe it's something that we've overplayed in a lot of background music gigs, and this isn't something that matches the vibe of what we're playing on the bandstand. And someone puts a $20 bill in the tip jar at the Elephant Room, and they say, hey, can you play Girl from Ipanema? Now, they're not asking you at that point. They're demanding that you do it, and they're just assuming you can do it. And I can do a couple of things, right? We can say, well, let's play it. He tipped a bunch of money, and there's no money in the tip jar, so let's just suck it up and do it, or you know, whatever. Or I can risk him taking the money out of the tip jar and go, well, hey, how about this? That's not a tune that we play in this band, but there are a lot of other Jobim tunes that we play, and I'd love to play that are similar in style, and I'd love to play one of those for you if that's okay. Like, I'll do that. Because part of our thing, too, is to help try to educate a little bit. And not be an educator, but like just to give some light. It's like, hey, I know you came down to the Elephant Room with your Tinder date and you're trying to be impressive, like getting the band to play it, like the one tune that you heard one time.
No, yeah, sure.
You know, it's like, I get it. But like, we're going to do something that's similar, but it's more in the wheelhouse and the vibe of the band, and we'll play something else. And man, 9 times out of 10, they leave the money in there, and on the set break, they come back to us and go, man, I've had people multiple times, man, I didn't know that tune. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. And I'm looking it up. Like, I'm looking at this playlist on Spotify. Is there something else you can recommend? Yeah. Like, well, if you're into Bossa Nova, maybe you should check this out, whatever. It's like, have you checked the stuff with Stan Getz or what? Yeah. It's like, check these things out and see if you like them, you know? Yeah. And then or like look them up on YouTube, and then there'll be all those other videos that you can click on and find things.
Yeah.
It's like, if you have the time, it's like, I'm not here to like be like, I mean, there was a time where I was like, piss off, leave me alone, man. And then I grew up a little bit and was like, okay, so I can do that and possibly be getting in a fight outside of the bar on the set break, or I can try to like educate a little bit and give them what they want, while at the same time contributing in a way to the band that's inherently us, that all the rest of the audience is expecting us to do. It's like, it's that funny little thing. And
well, at that point too, I mean, if they're there with their Tinder date and they only know Ipanema, it's at that point you're like, hey man, actually, if that's the only one how about you go back and you tell your Tinder date, be like, yeah, I went up there to ask for this one and just shot in the dark. I was like, hey, do you guys know Estrada Branca? This like crazy, Portuguese, like,
sure, yeah.
And then like they knew it, and then you can like act like you're like, yeah, just go tell her that, and then now you'll look cooler, and they're like, oh man, here's another 5,
Well, at the end of the day, I hope they would take the hint and be like, here's your chance. Even if I didn't say it, it's like, here's your chance to be impressive. We're going to call something different, and you can act like that you called that or something or whatever, or that was your backup tune or
whatever narrative. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just getting people just associated with it, to have appreciation for the arts and music and like, yes, there are things I don't like to listen to and I hardly ever listen to, but it's not like I haven't researched them, and it's not like I haven't thought about what kind of worth it has for somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people that I know, especially in my hometown. It's like, yeah, I listen to this band, they saved my life or whatever. It's like, you hear those stories and it's like, maybe it's something I can't stand, but it's like that, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have worth, to think, to not have an appreciation for something like that is really inexcusable. And it's like, and it's a reminder for me too, to like keep researching and not just what's in my wheelhouse and what I'm really into, and trying to connect the dots between what I do and what somebody else does. And, I have so many friends that are rock drummers that might show up to an Elephant gig, and they come up to me on the set break or maybe I don't know them, and they go, yeah, yeah, man. It's like, I know they always downplay what they do. And that blows my mind because it's like, yeah, man, I mean, no, I play in this band or whatever. Well, I mean, I can't, I've always wanted to, they always say, a lot of them say, I always wanted to do the jazz thing. I just can't do what you can do. I go, well, I mean, sure. But dude, like, I can't just walk into your gig and play your gig down.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. They're like, oh, but you could. You learned the tunes. And like, well, dude, you have to play with a certain physique and you have to play real big. And it's like, that's not something I'm doing all the time. Like, maybe I have more finesse, but I'm not just having all this power that you're coming to. It's not like I can't do that, but it's like, I have to go out of my wheelhouse to do that thing that you can naturally do. So you need to give yourself much more credit. And it's like you're reaching people who love your music and love your vibe. So like, you need to, be grateful for what you're doing. It's like, it's like, dude, they always say, I just can't do what you do. And I say, well, I can't do what you do. And they go, yes, you can. I said, no, I can't. Yeah. It's like, listen, man, I'm not used to, and it's more than just the aspects of playing. If they're on tour and they got to do all these things, I don't know anything about that. Yeah. I hardly ever go on tour, and if I do, it's with like a jazz related act, and it's we're in the car, we're not in the van, so or on the bus. So it's like I would be so out of my element just mentally. So give yourself some credit, and you are a valid musician. All because you came and saw some crazy stuff that you wish you could do doesn't mean you're not valid. Yeah. Like, and if anything, you'll become more memorable,
Good.
It's like listening to drummers that are really busy, and then like listening to somebody like Billy Higgins, or like listening to somebody like Mel Lewis. Those cats where it's like they could do that stuff, but they played so simple, and the cymbal beat was just, it was such a beautiful song, you know. And it's like, you know, how many trio recordings do I listen to where the drummer is very, very busy and it's beautiful and amazing, but then like you listen to Cedar Walton Trio with Billy Higgins, and it's just clean and clear as day, and it's most like you listen to that and it's like, man, that all of a sudden that drummer is so memorable. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like you're valid, man. It's like you're valid. Like it's okay. Like all because you can't, you know, play really up tempo swing doesn't mean you're not a valid musician. Like come on, like it's okay. Like do your thing and do it the best you can, because that's what really speaks to you. Like and maybe you can take parts of what I do and you can adapt it into your playing that's beneficial for you. It's not like I don't see like the White Denim Band play, and you know Greg Clifford, who's just a monster of a drummer. He's like the most absolute perfect fit for that band. And it's like, you know, I see him playing that band. It's not like I don't watch those like Instagram videos and be like, man, that's killing. And then I go back to the drum set over here and I figure him out a little bit. It's like there's always something for you to grab and try to relate to. Yeah. Like that's so important, man. And once we've realized how similar everyone is, like it becomes unified, like it's clear, just like like everybody, not in a bad way, in a beautiful, amazing way. Like everybody's doing the same thing. It's just a little different, you know? And that's what's so cool. That's just what's so cool about playing music, you know?
Daniel, you're the Mr. Rogers of jazz drummers. You're just like, you're valid, man. You're doing the thing. It's like they say to you, they're like, no, I couldn't do what you do, and you're just playing tennis. You're like, no, yeah, you can do it. You can do it, man. Like it's I can't do what you do, whatever. Man, this is incredible. This has been such an amazing. Again, I want to be conscientious of your time too, and
sure, yeah. Let's end it here. That'd be good. Probably.
Yeah. So, but man, let's definitely do this again. Once this all smooths out, let's get together. Let's have a beer or several. I've got a stockpile, so you're welcome over anytime. But yeah, man. And so the kind of thing that we're going to do, I kind of gave you a heads up, was how we're going to close out every time is we as gigging musicians have no shortage of crazy, funny, whether it's like a private gig and there's like a bridezilla, or there's like a crazy mother of the bride that's like freaking out at you, or you're just playing on the gig and somebody jumps up on the stand and grabs the mic and they think that they're funny, you know, and they're showing off. Man, what's like the most outlandish or just like comical gig story you got?
So this is the most comical and the most terrifying at the same exact time. I was playing with a band who shall not be named. It's not that I was playing with this certain band for a while, and it's no ill will. It's just for the sake of the story, you know, just to be legit about it. And we had a private gig, and it was a wedding reception. Okay. Out in the hill country. So there was a storm that was going to roll through that day, apparently. And we showed up and we set up to play. We started playing, and we were underneath a barn. Like there was a huge awning. Sure. And we were like in the middle of it. And then all of a sudden it was raining so hard and the wind was blowing so hard. It was legitimately raining sideways, and it shut the power off. And so there was the barn, you know, built in with the awning. And what happened? A tornado watch came up.
Oh no!
So the power's out. We're stuck out in the hill country, and a tornado is apparent. There's a tornado warning, but the storm was going to blow over relatively fast. So we all got in the barn. Everyone celebrating, the band, power's out, people are getting drunk, And then one of the horn players, who's one of my dear friends, I'll leave him out just for the sake of this.
Sure.
And he just said, "Hey, I want to show you something." I said, "What?" And he pulled up this weather radar on his phone, and he's like, "Do you see this?" I go, "Yeah." And he's like, "This is us." And he just points. He goes like half an inch up on his phone. He goes, "Do you see this red dot?" I said, "Yeah. What is that?" He's like, "Don't tell anybody, but that's a tornado." It's like there's a legit tornado like really close by. And I was like, "Oh shit, this might be it." Like this legit might be it. Like, what? Like, am I legitimately like in the movie Twister right now? Like, what is going on? And he was like, "Don't tell anybody." And I was, so everybody's getting wasted in this barn, and I'm like, "Yeah, I ain't telling nobody. I'm just going." Well, and we were sitting there for like 15 minutes. And then it stopped raining, thankfully, very thankful to still be alive. And we all got out of the barn, and power was still out. Power was going to be out.
Yeah. And
I was packing up my shit, and I was getting ready to leave. I was like, "I'm getting out of here. I'm not fucking with this. Sorry, anymore. Like, I'm not messing with this anymore. You know, I they already gave me my check. I'm getting out of here. This is unacceptable."
Yeah.
You know? And it was like, there's no way we have to play. Well, the leader of the band at the time, who signed the contract, did not have a weather clause.
Oh, no.
In the contract. And so we had to stay and play. We had to stay and play acoustically for a bunch of drunk people partying in the dark. Now, here's the kicker. We got out of the barn, and there were all these plastic tables and tents and stuff set up for people. They had all blown over, sure. But on one of the tables was still standing, and I'll send you a picture of this. Okay. One of the tables was still standing outside, and there was they had barbecue catering, and the plate of food was still sitting on it. And so I said, "Hey, I told one of the guys, I want you to take a picture." And I walked over there and bent over like I was going to eat. And they took a picture. And so, and I posted it on Facebook and said, "Band's got to eat." And it was me trying to eat this food. And in the background, just tore up tents and tables everywhere. It was like, I was so delirious. And then I tried to pack up. It's like, we actually still have to play. We're contracted to. And I was just so angry. It was like, I almost died. And it's like, I have to still play for all these drunk people. And it's not like they didn't have a good time, but I was like, I can't believe this is happening right now. Like, this was one of the worst gigs of my life. And I was just so inherently angry. Safe to say, I didn't stick around in that band that much longer.
Sure.
And that wasn't necessarily the reason. It's just you play with certain groups that play those things for a while. And for me, I just need to, okay, it's time to take my leave and go do something else or whatever. I'm kind of like that with those kind of gigs. But yeah, I'll send you that thing. And it's like somebody's old iPhone 3 or iPhone 4. It's a really grainy photo of me trying to eat nasty barbecue with everything just destroyed in the background. And it was just the band's got to eat. And it was just one of the most epic photos I've ever taken because that hits on so many levels.
Yeah.
Right. It's that is the nature equivalent of the band witch when you see everybody else eating eating at the beautiful buffet. You get the little sandwich that's been smushed and everybody's eating steak or something crazy expensive. It's just I can't believe this is happening right now. I'm playing and I'm like, I can't believe this is happening right now. Yeah. It's one of the worst. It was the worst gig, which was sad because we showed up and it was a cool hang. I was like, yeah, it looks like it's going to rain. It'll be all right, And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah, we're 2 miles away from a tornado. Yeah. And then, yeah, it was out in Dripping Springs. That's what it was. It was out in Dripping Springs.
Man.
I'll never forget that, man. It was super funny.
Well, man, what an incredible story. What an incredible inaugural Off the Bandstand episode. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking the time. Let's definitely get together when we can and make the hang. And I'll try to, if I can, in the video, I'll put that picture in so people can.
Oh yeah,
viewers can see that as well.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'm gonna pull it up now. I'll send it to you.
Cool, man. Sounds great. Well, Daniel, thank you so much, man. Congratulations on the record. Again, everybody go check out Standards on Spotify and check out, what's your website address?
It's just Daniel Dufour, DanielDufour.com. DanielDufour.com.
Awesome. And guys, if you can buy the record on like iTunes, or if he has physical copies, whatever you need to do. And if you can't, just go over on Spotify, listen to it, but support musicians, buy their stuff. It helps us to make more. Daniel, thank you so much again. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Be in touch.
Peace. Bye.